25 states would prohibit all of those abortions. Some already have what are called trigger laws that would immediately go into effect to ban abortion as soon as Roe was gone. Others would revive the statutes that have been ineffective but on the books since the pre-Roe era. Other states would, I think, strengthen protections for abortion rights. And then there would be states that would fall in the middle, which would expect to both business and fellow forces pouring lots of money into the fight to determine what the policy in those places would look like. But it looks as if the country would be fairly evenly divided between the states that would and would not allow abortion.
Even if abortion is banned in half of America, that won't be the end of the anti-abortion movement.
What abortion opponents want is for the Supreme Court to say that an unborn child or fetus is a person within the meaning of key constitutional provisions. And if that's true, that would make abortion unconstitutional nationwide in places like New York as well as in places like Texas. I don't think that's going to happen immediately, but it's certainly on the agenda, and the abortion lawyers believe the Supreme Court is conservative enough to go in that direction. The thing that's the clearest is that the Supreme Court won't be able to end this, and there's no real prospect of resolving the U.S. abortion rules, in part because so many people have invested in making this so divisive. That's true of social movements, it's true of nonprofits and political action committees that raise money off of this issue. It's true in different ways of both major political parties. So the courts are only a small part of conversations about abortion in America, which I think look poised to continue regardless of what happens in the Mississippi case.
So the conflict between groups for and against abortion is set to continue regardless.
Yes, I think that in the foreseeable future, no way to imagine that conflict ending anytime soon.
So will abortion be banned in America? This issue doesn't lend itself to compromise. Lawmakers in several states have been trying to tighten restrictions for years. Texas has found a legal loophole that works. If a total ban isn't possible, then a near ban might be good enough. Mississippi poses the next big threat to decades of constitutional protection. But even if that fails, others will follow. This edition of the inquiry was presented and produced by me, Shannon Crozier, researcher is Christopher Blake, and studio manager Rod Farquhar. This is the BBC World Service, bringing science into focus.
The English video is, in my opinion, the single most exciting topic in the whole of science. Each and every one of us has a different view of science. It provides this perfect natural laboratory for botanists to come in and kind of play with this toy volcano. To many, it is fun and fascinating.
You can see this green packet, orange, yellow, orange, packet flowers covering the whole desert.
For some, it is frustrating. All I want to see done is to tap into the national group wirelessly. But for all of us, science matters. Essentially, we found that 60% of oil reserves and 90% of coal reserves need to remain unused to keep within our carbon budget. Science. I could talk about this for 24 hours without taking a breath on the BBC World Service.
In a few minutes in World Business Report, cable roads. Travelling to find the right charger for the right device can make your head spin. But should the European Commission be trying to impose a standard charging port on the makers of smartphones and tablets? And we'll have the latest on the uncertainty over the future of Evergrande, the debt-laden Chinese property developer. Is it just too big to fail for the Chinese people? First, a short summary of the latest world news.
On WS the BBC News. The European Commission has announced plans to ensure that chargers are made compatible with all portable electronic devices. It's a universal charger for all mobile phones, tablets and headphones with cut weight and voice duplication. The change would affect consumers around the world. The French Parliament has passed legislation aimed at curbing the power of the country's oligarchs. The new law could oblige some countries' richest business leaders to sell off their TV channels and stop financing political parties. Oligarchs have been accused of blocking reforms and corruption. The US Special be essentially involved with what he calls the inhumane deportation of Haitian migrants. His departure comes days after the US authorities began deporting thousands of Haitian migrants gathered under a bridge connecting Texas and Mexico. A new study has warned that more than 100 countries will have to slash spending on vital services because the pandemic has pushed them into even deeper debt. Researchers in the US say unsustainable levels of debt are widening global inequalities. Feeding children's charities accuse some of the world's richest countries of abandoning children living in dire conditions in the northern Syrian refugee camp set up to house the families of Islamic State fighters. Save the Children says inmates endure nearly 15 cases of violence. Lebanon's state electricity company has warned the agenda of a total and complete nationwide blackout by the end of the month. Fuel supplies are dwindling, and the plants have already stopped producing any power. A prominent Sri Lankan shaman who claimed that his miracle potions could protect people from coronavirus has died from the disease. Elianto White, who supports politicians with the patient, which he said had come to him in a plane.
Hello and welcome to World Business Report from the BBC World. Today, a new plan to cut electronic waste in Europe. The European Commission wants to impose a universal charger for devices including smartphones and tablets. White Apple believes it's a rotten idea. Also in the programme, we ask if Beijing will allow the debt-laden Chinese property developer Evergrande to fail. And with the UN Food Summit underway in New York, is the global agriculture system broken?
Most of the goods, they cross borders at least 2 times. So you might be exporting something and getting it back 2 weeks later.
This is coming up over the next half hour or so. If you are anything like me, you'll have a big box at home full of old electrical chargers. Including the entire cupboard, all with slightly different connectors on the end, which infuriates me in any device you've ever had in your house. Well, now the European Commission has unveiled a plan designed to make such cable fury, let's call it, a thing of the past. In the world first, the Commission says it intends to impose a universal charging port for mobile phones, tablets and headphones. The idea is to reduce waste and save users money. Joe Breton is European Commissioner for Internal Market.
We know that different members of the family have different mobile phones. The idea now is that everybody will be able to use the same charger in order to charge their appliances. This will constitute a considerable saving in money and in terms of the reduction of electronic waste.
Well, under the proposal, the USB-C connector, currently used by about a third of mobile phones, would become the standard. The Commission says that would save 1,000 tonnes of electronic waste each year. Apple, though, isn't happy. The company has its own Lightning connector and argues that a one-size-fits-all charger would stifle innovation. Louise Gill at the news website Politico in Brussels has been giving me the background to the Commission's proposal.
The dispute started a decade ago in 2009 when the European Commission gathered tech manufacturers together and asked them to work towards introducing a common charger. So the Commission gathered them and made them sign a voluntary agreement. And in this agreement, they said they would try to make chargers interoperable so that you could use one common charger for different devices. So at the time, we had about 30 different chargers, type of chargers. And so the voluntary agreement has been renewed in 2012 and then it expired in 2014. But at the time, still the Commission couldn't witness one single charging solution. So we decided it will study in the future how to bring a little bit more towards having one common solution, because now we witness that we have about 3 different solutions: the USB Mini, the USB-C, USB-C and Apple's proprietary solution, which is called Lightning.
Yeah, so that voluntary agreement whittled down the number of mobile phone chargers the hackers get to grips with, which is set from about 33. But that wasn't enough for the European Commission. They are determined to have a single interoperable charger for all of these mobile devices.
Yes, indeed. That was the idea. So the Commission in 2019 to try to see whether continuing with this voluntary approach, they could lean toward the solution of one common charger. But the voluntary agreement didn't go through. And so now the Commission has decided to regulate this issue and to put forward a legislative proposal that will require not only smartphones, but also tablets, cameras, loudspeakers in the future to have the same single connector so that you can plug the same charging cable to different small electronic devices.
So how soon might it be before this proposal becomes law? Because it still needs to get the green light from the European Parliament and individual EU countries, doesn't it?
Yes, indeed. Today's proposal is just the beginning of the discussion, but the Commission foresees the rules to kick in 2024. So we would like the proposal to be adopted sometime next year, and then give 1 year to member countries to translate this directive into the national legislation, and then 1 year to manufacturers to adapt to the new rules.
And is the Commission likely to get the support that it needs to make this law, do you think? Will it pass, do you think?
Well, there is strong support in the European Parliament from an ambitious proposal on the common charger. Since 2014, the European Parliament has been asking the Commission to legislate on that issue, has been asking binding rules to make this common charger see the light of day. It's a bit more difficult at the moment to read and see what will happen on the side of the country and what member states will, how they will react to the proposal. But we've seen that a number of countries are supporting circular economy initiatives and making sure that it's easier to reuse, to return, to recycle your electronic devices. So we can expect that obviously it remains to be seen. And some support at least from part of the European countries to this proposal.
Louis Stewart, Politico in Brussels. Well, I've been hearing a little bit more about the industry reaction to the idea from the BBC's technology reporter David Malloy.
Well, USB-C is already used in lots of small electronics, and it's generally considered to be a pretty good option. The major hurdle is Apple. And if you have an Apple phone, you might be well aware of the use of Lightning connector, which actually does look a little bit like a thin USB-C connector. But Apple is reluctant to change. They say that this kind of mandate will affect their ability to innovate with new things, and they're very, very reluctant to change. But overall, this sector is moving in that direction. The newest Android smartphones for the last few years have all come with USB-C. In fact, even Apple's iPads have moved to the platform as well.
And Matthew is saying that this is going to lead to massive amounts of waste and slow innovation. The European Commission is saying the exact opposite. We're going to make the standards we adopt, we make sure that the charges are efficient. I mean, what's the ordinary use to make those two different positions right now?
When you have all these chargers out in the wild that use the Lightning cable and all these phones, and then you put in a new standard, all of that old cabling is now waste. But is it better to make the change now and have a short-term problem for a long-term gain? And that's basically the two sides of the argument. The EU is saying that if we get everyone to use the same system, the long-term benefits are much greater.
And these days, plenty of phones charge wireless, and I don't think wireless chargers are affected by this. No.
Yeah, the proposal in some ways is really simple. It just says let's change the port on the actual device itself, which has a knock-on effect of changing all the chargers. But wireless charging, it's also a little bit less energy efficient. You lose a little bit of the energy to the air as heat. But there is speculation that Apple is planning on getting rid of the wire charging entirely and moving to its magnetic wireless charging system for charging.
And do you think the tech world generally is surreptitiously attempt by Russell, in inverted commas, to get involved in all this kind of thing. Do people genuinely think, look, you know, if we get the bureaucrats involved, it will stifle innovation, and it will end up with charges which simply aren't as good as they might have been if Brussels hadn't got involved?
There's definitely a feeling in the industry about like this. For example, this rule, we're all talking about, you know, what the charges will look like in terms of approach, because that's what consumers care about. But there's actually more in it. They want to standardize how the fast charging delivery works, and that could have implications. If someone invents a new type of fast charging that is outside of the standard, that could be a problem.
That's the reach of David Malloy in our technology. A week ago, Australia caused something of an international storm by teaming up with the US and the UK, rather than France, for a deal to build new submarines. Now comes confirmation that Australia will also be the location for the US aerospace giant Boeing's first overseas manufacturing facility. The new Boeing plant will be in Queensland, and it will produce unmanned military drones. I've been hearing here from Andrew Green, defence correspondent for the Australian Broadcasting Corporation in Canberra.
The Royal Wingman programme has been a concept for several years since it was unveiled at the Avalon International Air Show back in 2019. It came as a surprise when it was announced back then. So this is really the logical next phase of that programme. At this stage, expected the Queensland government says to create 300 jobs and 70 operational extra jobs. But what is significant is that it's the first time that Boeing has set up a facility of this scale outside its North American headquarters.
So why Australia?
It's an interesting question, though that question was also asked back in 2019 when the secret development project was first unveiled. It was considered quite remarkable at the time that a US prime would team up with the Australian Defence Department, but I think there were a lot of mutual benefits to both sides. Royal Australian Air Force recognised the need to start getting into unmanned technology, and Boeing was going to expand elsewhere, so the Australian government stumped up several $1 million for the project at the time.
And this news comes just a week after Australia struck that controversial submarine deal with the US and also the UK, much to the annoyance of France. Is this just a coincidence? Now we've got an American company making this big announcement regarding Australia.
This Royal Wingman project has been many years in the making. Even before 2019, it was under secret development for several years. The announcement last week of a trilateral security partnership would probably help an American project like this, as it would other British projects, and I suspect it's just the case.
You see enormous amounts of money being spent by Australia on defence. I think the defence budget is 15% higher this year than last, and I've dedicated in US dollars. What's going on? Why is that?
One word, China. The Australian government at all levels is very concerned with what's happening to Australia's north and across the Pacific, the militarisation of the South China Sea and the growing size of the People's Republic of China generally has Australian lawmakers very scared, and it is the common theme across all of Australia's defence documents is this concern about what is referred to as instability in the region, and that is definitely code for the rise of crime.
And this is extra spending on defence. Is that something Australians support? Are they happy to see that money being spent on things like unmanned drones?
Generally, defence policy has had a bipartisan feel to it. It's not something that dominates election campaigns. There is, of course, arguments over who is better at handling defence and national security. The absolute scale of the now scrapped French submarine program has been controversial. That was causing problems for the government. But having said that, we've now scrapped a 90 billion Australian dollar program, and we'll instead be spending, we're told, a lot more on nuclear power submarines.
Defence journalist Andrew Green of ABC in Canberra. debts of $300 billion, you know you're in trouble. That, though, is the bleak situation facing the Chinese property developer Evergrande. Fears the company may collapse, and the impact that could have on the broader Chinese economy. And thinking this goods under global share markets. Evergrande shares recovered some of their recent losses on Thursday, on news that the business has met a deadline to repay Chinese investors around $36 million. Another debt worth around $83 million, this time owed to foreign investors, is also now due repayment. Iris Pang is Chief Economist for Greater China at the bank ING in Hong Kong.
It shouldn't be a problem if Evergrande can continue to build and continue to sell their properties to residential units and then get cash from the properties sold and then repay the debt.
Right, but the basic problem is it doesn't seem to have enough money coming in to complete the construction of the existing housing, the residential projects that it is involved with. Is that right?
Yes, good question. It is because the Chinese government continued reducing debt exercise and imposed a lot of policies on how these property developers can sell properties and how they can raise money. So there are more and more limitations this year. It makes real estate developers more difficult to operate and therefore hit Evergrande.
So there's an $83 and a bit million foreign debt due for repayment, the interest on that on Thursday. We don't yet know if that has been repaid. I think there's another 30 days grace on top of that as well to find the money. And who does Evergrande owe this debt to, the foreign debt that it has? Who has lent it this money outside China?
From the public information, we know that those are actually fund managers, including exchange traded funds combined in one equity and then listed in an exchange. It could be listed on the exchange and then it includes Evergrande. So these are the foreign players.
The big question is, what is the risk of contagion for the broader economy in China, maybe elsewhere in Asia too, if Evergrande can't pay back what it owes, if it defaults on its debt?
Then the Chinese government will step in and then it could do some capital injection into Evergrande in exchange of Evergrande's shares. That means the Chinese government may own some of the Evergrande shares, and then the Evergrande could eventually become government-owned. The other option is that some state-owned enterprises under the Chinese government inject capital into Evergrande and they own part of Evergrande. And Evergrande will be between semi-state-owned, semi-private. And the other one is that a total blow-up, which is very unlikely because there are a lot of employees in Evergrande and this will make the job market big shock and therefore the shock will blow consumption as well. It's not just one company thing.
Okay, so there's been a lot of talk, hasn't there, about whether Evergrande is China's Lehman. And just to recap, the US government didn't step in to rescue the investment bank Lehman Brothers. It collapsed with the financial crisis back in 2008. You think one way or another, the Chinese government won't let Evergrande fail?
No, it's not Lehman Brothers in any terms. The first thing is that Evergrande is not a financial company. It's not a bank. It's not a financial institution. The nature of this case is different. And the other thing is that the Chinese government is prepared. Therefore, we see that the central bank, which is called the PBOC, has already give more cash to the market. It means that the number of cash in the market is ample, so it will not create sharp increase in interest rates in the China market. It won't repeat that. So it is not comparable to a Lehman moment.
Iris Pang, ING speaking from Hong Kong. We're more now on that rally for Evergrande shares in Hong Kong on Thursday. Susanna Scooter at the investment company Hargreaves Lansdown joins us now. Susanna, some relief from investors, I guess, that Evergrande met that deadline to prepay lenders in China.
Yes, so there was a surge in the share price up around 17%, but Evergrande has fallen 82% over the past year, shares in Evergrande. And I don't think these worries are going to go away anytime soon. Your previous guest seemed pretty upbeat. First said Beijing would step in some way, but there is also a lot of speculation that actually what may happen is that Beijing oversees an orderly, if you can say that, dismantling of the group, and perhaps many of the unfurnished and unfinished properties, certainly unfurnished, but definitely unfinished, perhaps taken over by state-owned companies. Certainly, it doesn't want to allow potentially millions of would-be homeowners to face financial ruin because their properties aren't finished. But the problem that Evergrande has is that it can't afford to pay its suppliers to finish those properties. So even if interest rates don't rise to put it in a more precarious situation, it's already facing a precarious situation. It's like a property house of cards built on a borrow-to-build business model. It just tumbled down as they tightened all these rules in the property sector. So we're just going to have to wait and see. I think the market is waiting with bated breath.
Okay, Susanna, we're out of time. We'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed, though, for joining us as Susanna Fruited from the UK investment company Hargreaves Lansdown. London's main share index at the moment is about a tenth of 1% higher on the day at 7,091. And on New York, the Dow, that's up a little bit more sharply. It's up 1.38% at 34,722. We speak to some campaigners and they will tell you that the global food system is broken. When our farmers produce more than enough food for the population, hundreds of millions of people still go hungry. Food gets exported out of countries that really need it, and so many of those farmers struggle to earn a living. That's the backdrop to a meeting on Thursday as part of the UN General Assembly in New York called the UN Food Systems Summit. More than 85 heads of state and government are new ways to make food production more efficient. The World Food Programme has more than 270 million people's lives or livelihoods are in immediate danger because of a lack of food. Nina Mohammed with the UN Deputy Secretary General.
Even before the pandemic, the Sustainable Development Goals were off track. However, along came COVID, exacerbated it, and particularly SDG on the hunger. And that's, threatening to reverse the gains that we've had over the years of our investments in food and nutrition and trying to address the climate context that we have at climate change. And I don't think that we've had the investments at the scale and the sense of urgency. So it's not catching up to the population, it's not catching up to the needs of communities and the country as a whole. So that every investment has a return, but not just for the businessmen, not just for government and the revenue, but for the people as well.
We'll be hearing a little bit more about today's summit's challenges from Ismahan El-Wafi, who's food scientist at the UN's Food and Agriculture Organization.
There is a lot of movement of goods around the world in a non-organized way. Most of the goods, they cross borders at least 2 times. So you might be exporting something and getting it back 2 weeks later. So there is a lot of inefficiencies at the production level, at the processing level, but also at the distribution level.
So who loses out as a result of these inefficiencies? What are the problems that it causes?
The losers are the food. The other losers, I would see, it's the rural versus the urban. So we've got a lot of rural poverty because they don't have access to markets or they don't have the technology to produce and not any infrastructure or energy on the road and all the complements around it to process their crops to have higher add value as well.
You talked about inefficiency in the food system. What's the problem with that causes?
What it does is that sometimes we put this certain communities to produce only for export. So if I am producing to get income, I should get the best crop for that land. So maybe it's not fruit, maybe it's quinoa instead of fruit. Maybe it's not oranges, maybe it's olive trees instead of oranges. So global markets have pushed many farmers and countries to produce certain commodities what's your ecosystem is best for.
But in practice, what do you do about this? I mean, farmers need to earn money. If they can earn more money by exporting the food that they grow and produce, that's what's going to happen. You're not going to reverse globalization in agriculture overnight.
It's not reversing globalization, it's bringing in it some logic. And for me, practically, I would pitch that farmers should get more income.
That's easy to say, harder to do. How do farmers get? Are you talking about a return to government subsidies or what? Growing different things? What?
So you have to look at our pricing. So when you look at the return on investment trend of any commodity, you will find that the farmer is the lowest. You find processing that multiply by 10. You get into the legislature, you have much more. You get into the supermarket, you get much more. Is it the normal curve that you want to keep? The farmers really the least income out of their own crops that they are producing. So I think we have to review that. And that's why the government has to really think it through and find a solution. It's policies and incentives and subsidies and many other things. I have another solution, which is bringing farmers to part of the value chain and part of the sector. In the old days, if you think about it, most farmers that produce and process. So you think about cheese. They produce the milk and have the cheese and then sell the cheese. So in the old days, the processing was much closer to the farmer. And you should give them more income and give them more know-how, technology, innovation, and more opportunities to be part of the value chain, including the processing company.
This summit, I guess, is going to be another talking step, isn't it? There's plenty of them, particularly in the global food industry. What practically is it going to do to affect any change along the lines that you've just been talking about?
I think, Mike, it's the first time that we're talking to this. You have to find solutions, particularly in the least income countries, because when you get into technology to produce, then they have a problem with energy or a problem with transportation, quality. So I hope really that we take advantage of the system analysis to find the proper solution, particularly for the least income countries and for the poor of the future.
That was Ismahan Elwati, the food scientist at UN's Food and Agriculture Organization. That's all from us for now. Just have time to remind you can email us with your thoughts on the programme. Our address is world.business@bbc.co.uk. Thanks for listening, and goodbye.
You're listening to the BBC World Service, and here's what's happening in the studio this week. Norwegian fashion designer Peter Bendis is known for his corporate mature, addressing some of the world's most powerful women, from Beyonce to Michelle Obama. Follow Peter in his London studio as he designs a bespoke dress for singer-songwriter Ciara for the Met Gala in New York. In the studio, that's bbcworldservice.com/in the studio. And at bbcworldservice.com, Digital Planet with Gareth Mitchell.
A new computer program offers improved sea ice forecasting in the Arctic, a region particularly affected by global warming. The algorithm could help indigenous communities better cope with conditions continue to change.
This is the BBC World Service, the world's media station.
Welcome to OS with James Reynolds, live from the BBC. More than a month into the new Taliban-led era in Afghanistan, so many questions remain unanswered. Will women be allowed to work and study properly? Which books will be acceptable to them? The newly appointed head of Kabul University has announced plans to appoint more pro-Islamic staff. Mohammed al-Fashdari says that this will help to fulfill the Taliban's plans to Islamicize the curriculum. Where then does this leave the university's current staff? And what does it mean for students who enrolled in one kind of university need to find themselves now studying at what now may be an entirely different institution? Well, this comes as countries around the world debate how to do business with Afghanistan's new rulers. It is a difficult, practically impossible balance, and engage with the Taliban without also formally recognizing them as realistic.
NWS is the BBC News. The US Special Envoy for Haiti, Dominic Quick, has put his word, saying he does not want to be involved with what he calls the inhumane deportation of Haitian migrants. his resignation yesterday, he said it was counterproductive to deport thousands of Haitian refugees and illegal immigrants. Nominate this from Washington.
Daniel Foot was appointed ambassador after the assassination of Haiti's president earlier in the year. In a letter, he said the US policy towards Haiti is deeply flawed and he does not want to be associated with it. The US government has continued to fly hundreds of people, including families, back to Haiti, with conditions deteriorating in migrant camps on both sides of the US-Mexico border. Mr. Foot said they were being returned to the country without any basic services. Shocking images of border guards on horseback appearing to use aggressive tactics on people along the border emerged last week.
The European Commission has announced plans to ensure that chargers are made compatible with all portable electronic devices. The said of universal chargers for mobile phones, tablets and headphones with platforms and avoid duplication. The change would affect consumers around the world. Apple said the measure would stand for innovation. And the EU Commissioner, Thierry Breton, insisted it would help consumers.
When you will buy a product, you will not be obliged to buy also a charger. Today, when you buy a product, you have the charger everywhere. By the way, if you buy at home, you have probably a lot of chargers that you don't use. So now, you will have the freedom to buy a product with a charger.
Ukraine's parliament passed legislation and expanding the power of defensive oligarchs. The new law Ukraine's richest citizens to allow their TV channels and stop financing political parties. The influence of oligarchs extends to all aspects of society in Ukraine and Europe's fourth countries. They've been accused of blocking reforms and extending corruption. A new study has warned that more than 100 countries will have